second afternoon HCM show. I am your host, the Duke of Suffolk, Lord Charles Brandon. For those of you who do not know, I shall let these others introduce themselves.
I'm Captain Latimer Fairfield, Captain of the Privateer Seahawk and Baron of Sussex.
Thomas Cromwell, Secretary of State and Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Annabelle Baldy, village milkmaid.
Yeah!
Annabelle has a fan.
And old Johnny Dew, vagabond, teller of tales and unlicensed beggar.
A bit to port, Your Grace.
He's on the stage, then sitting on.
All six of us for the price of one.
Today we're going to go into a little more detail about something we covered yesterday afternoon. We started talking about the Sumptuary Laws and fashion. We touched on them a bit. I wanted to start by going into a little more detail because many people believe that the Sumptuary Laws were laws that were put into place to keep the burgeoning middle class down, to put them in their place. That is in fact not true. The Sumptuary Laws actually began in the 12th century. You have to, in order to understand them, you must understand the mindset of the people that lived in that period of time and up to our period of time in the 16th century. This is the period of time of outward shows of wealth. The wealth that you display is the wealth that you have.
Welcome to the age of outward show.
The idea is very simple. If you appear to be prosperous, you are prosperous. Of course, the problem with this is that everybody who is not still wants to appear prosperous. People were bankrupting themselves with parties and clothing and feasting days.
Keeping up with the Howards, so
Right.
yeah.
So originally it was the church that put forth the first of the Sumptuary Laws, and they governed what certain classes of people could serve at feasts, food-wise. And the idea was, don't spend outside of your means. We all understand that, even in your days. But surprisingly, a lot of people still do it. And they did in our time as well.
They would host banquets that would really bankrupt themselves. They would have exotic animals, swans, very strange constructions of animals, meats presented that really broke the bank.
And remember that there is a disparity in our time between station or social class and wealth. They're usually connected, but not always. There are people that are land rich but money poor. There are those of the gentry that are very wealthy, perhaps in some cases wealthier than the nobility. But this is not about money, it is about station and also title and preserving people's well-being, as His Grace did say.
One of the great issues that the nobility has is that they have many lands. This is supposed to translate into coin. It does not always do so. My lord.
Why not?
Various and sundry reasons, you must be able to do something with that land.
Some lands are fruitful, others are not.
Others are not. Many lands are considered forests. A forest is actually not what you think of today as a forest. A forest is any land that is not claimed. It can be moors, it can be scrublands,
It could be
anything at all.
Meadow.
That's one of the reasons why you will have people.
All those beautiful places that unimaginative people have no use.
They must be owned. and
Now,
governed.
it is said that if the king does not like one of his nobles, it is possible that he might visit him several times a year, just to encourage such banquets and galas and balls.
Because it is the responsibility of the noble that is hosting the other nobles to put on the food.
It's
put
not
on the
quite
housing.
yet become ruined, but that is on the way.
It is a great honor, but it is
A
costly.
costly burden as well.
Indeed.
Your Grace, did you notice we're all standing by social station, by social class? All of us.
Indeed.
As if we'd raised.
Yes. Oh, you were running the road.
But so the sumptuary laws really are there to govern how much people can spend in order to look appropriate. Of course, nobody follows them, particularly in the provinces.
And the laws that were created are very rarely carried out. But there are instances where they are.
Enforcement is rather difficult, and of course there's always a little bit of money passing hands to make sure that enforcement looks the other way.
Welcome to the north where such rules are flouted.
Indeed,
Except
it's dreadful, really. As a lawyer, I deplore it.
it just so happens that there's a certain King of England in town at present. So at the moment, it might be wise not to flout them too much.
Yes, at court, the sumptuary laws are followed quite liberally. I mean, quite well. But in the provinces, particularly up in the north, not so much so. Indeed, there are those from East Anglia who have been known to wear almost royal colors.
Indeed.
By the way, what is the royal color?
Purple.
Right.
Why is it a royal color? What makes it so special?
Because it's hard to produce.
Precisely so.
And how is it produced?
Dyes, isn't it?
Dyes made
Made
from
from?
Shellfish.
Shellfish.
Exactly right.
Very rare, very small shellfish that have to be meticulously prepared in a certain way.
So why are parties? Dress obviously is important.
Yes.
But why wouldn't the people spend more money on the way they dress rather than parties? Why are parties so important?
Social.
Because, why do you have a
We
party?
live
Because
on
you want to
social
get your friends
interaction.
together.
Why be dressed up?
We live on social interaction and entertainment. In fact, more business is done at social interactions and entertainments than it is in court.
Kind of like in your day.
If you think about it, your entertainment possibilities in your day are endless.
Yes.
And they are at your fingertips.
Ours are very few.
We have to make our own entertainments, and they are few and far between quite often because we are hard workers. So when somebody throws a lavish party, everybody in the area will come if they're invited.
And
Even maybe if you're not.
one of the
Even if
things,
you don't like
yes,
them,
one of the things that is actually very important for nobles is to show themselves within the lands that they are responsible for. My Lord Norfolk, my Lord Suffolk, Suffolk myself, the Earls, they must spend time actually in the lands that they hold, throwing parties themselves, so that the aristocracy, the gentlemen and the other lesser nobles within their lands know that the lands themselves are doing well. So we end up spending an awful lot of money as well, trying to have parties and things of that nature, because they actually are a way of conducting business and to showing that we are in fact healthy and supportive.
Right now, the court is in Scarborough, which means they are all staying at the Rookery, at the Castle Keep in the Rookery.
Which means also that Scarborough is currently the capital of England because the king is here.
For wherever the king is, that's where the capital of England is.
That's where the court is, that's where the capital is.
And that is why the king carries his thrones with him everywhere he goes.
There's something called
The Verge of Court.
yes, verge of court, which is the court exists wherever the king and the queen are.
Now, there are certain signs which, if you know how to read them, will immediately tell you the station and the breeding and so forth of someone that interacts with. It is partly what we wear, it is also how we carry ourselves, and it is also how we speak as well. And if you know how to see the differences between all of the classes, you can tell immediately. You do not have to ask someone what class they are. You may not know where they're from, but you can at least tell their social class.
I will point something out very interesting that I think many of you will understand once I talk to you about it. Footwear. Footwear tells a great deal about somebody's life. When this man is at sea,
I'm barefoot most of the time.
he's barefoot most of the time. On a ship, you do not want anything on your feet but your feet.
A ship can grip the deck. I mean, if your feet can grip the deck and in the rigging much more easily than if you're wearing any type of shoes.
If you're in shoes, you might be going overboard.
And you're constantly wet,
Yeah.
so any leatherware tends to rot rather quickly.
The soft boots that many of our gentlemen wear are a sign of relaxation, but still activity. It's a high boot that comes up at least to the knee. It is of a soft leather. It is not meant for riding horses, but it is. It does show that he is a man that appreciates action.
man of leisure.
Indeed. People who work, rather, for a living tend to wear what Johnny is wearing, which is very easy footwear.
Aye, these are called gillies. This is design from Scotland and Ireland, but you see them in England as well, and they're just simple sandals, closed toe. That way, I get rocks in them a lot, but they're very comfortable.
Now, clearly, we would not be wearing boots such as these at court.
Courtly shoes would be in the fashion.
The courtly shoes, you would be rather familiar with the design. They look rather familiar, and they are much more, well, they are much less rugged, but rather comfortable. But they are also well adorned with whatever it is we can afford and is appropriate to our station.
There is a shoe called the duckfoot shoe, which is built about like this.
It's got wide-splayed
It's
toes.
for wide-splayed feet.
Came out of the Germanies and is very popular.
Very comfortable and very popular.
His Majesty favours them himself, among others.
Right.
For those of you who know something about the affliction of gout, gout is extremely painful, and it often begins in the big toe. The duckfoot shoes allow you to wear a shoe that does not put pressure on the toe.
That does not cramp your
Constricted.
feet.
Indeed.
I love them. For that very
Now, by the
reason.
way, we do not know what causes gout precisely. However, we know it's much of the extravagant food that the nobles eat. Because as we did talk about food earlier, who knows what the primary food on a noble's table is?
Yes,
Meat. How many meat? What kind?
All of it.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. All of it.
If it can be killed, it can be eaten, it will be on a noble's table.
In fact, this makes up a huge part of their diet.
Right.
It is very possible, and we were discussing this earlier, that the yeomanry and the lower gentry, and even some of the peasantry, eat better health-wise
More healthy.
than the nobles. Because they have fresh greens from their garden, vegetables.
They have a nice mix of food, whereas on the noble table, it's 80% meat.
Yeah.
Now I will show you something that is relatively new on a shoe. A heel.
Oh, yes.
Aye.
But we have put heels on our shoes relatively recently because we find it makes riding horses much more
Efficacious.
Yes,
It's
indeed.
stable, too.
And
Yeah.
single.
I was just saying, it holds your foot in the stirrup much better, so it does not slide.
long
single-
boots like these are almost always indicative of horsemen.
Aye. Seeing all these gentlemen in boots, it's likely they've probably been on a horse recently. Maybe out hunting, or riding, or something along those lines.
Horses being a principal mode of transportation, obviously. But back to
clothing.
We digress.
What are the lasses wearing? I wonder.
my boots on.
She has boots. Both of
Excuse
them are wearing boots.
Weird.
Small boots.
By the way, it is considered slightly inappropriate to see a woman's ankle, to show a woman's ankle.
But we will have, for educational purposes this day,
Sure, that sounds good.
we will be showing them.
For your edification.
Now our court ladies would be wearing something very similar to this. Lady Suffolk.
Oh my, we're going to see a show.
Oh, we're going to see it.
Gentlemen, avert your eye.
You'll notice it is a small shoe. Has a single strap across the top to hold it in place. This type of shoe has existed for hundreds of years and will continue to exist for hundreds of years.
Aye.
For those of you who do not know, this is the other Duke that is traveling with us. This is the Lord Norfolk.
Sir Thomas Howard.
There are 3 dukes currently: Suffolk, Norfolk, and Richmond,
Duke of Richmond.
the king's natural-born son.
His illegitimate son.
Very good way.
The natural born
Aye.
son.
Well, indeed.
Natural.
Well, I wanted to explain so that
I
you understood
understand which one.
all of your.
All righty then.
Well, there is also one other. The Duke of York.
Right.
Anyone know who that is?
And Cornwall.
At Cornwall.
Homo, aye.
That's your king.
He holds those duchies as well.
Not every county in England is held by an earl or a duke. Some of them are royal possessions.
So, back to clothing.
But we digress.
So the Sumptuary Laws were created for those reasons that we spoke of earlier. Now, what are the laws exactly? It is said that no one lesser than a baron's station may wear cloth of gold or thread of gold upon their person.
And as
Or
we
silver.
said this
Or
morning,
silver.
as the Lady Norfolk is wearing, that is made of gold thread.
Thread.
That is actual gold.
Spun gold.
Aye. Which means that It is not only prohibitively expensive for most people, but also it is limited to her station as well.
And it's heavy!
I am a courtier, I am of the gentry class. I may not wear gold. It is not appropriate to my station. Silver is, and so I wear much silver.
These studs that I am wearing on my leather are made of something called Latten, Latten. It is a gold alloy. It is not, it has properties similar to brass, but it is not brass.
Because remember, pure gold is extremely soft.
Yeah, it's a malleable metal, whereas Latin is very more sturdy.
You will also note that the Lord Norfolk and myself tend to adorn our fingers in gold, silver, and gems. Sir Henry, if you would please come forward.
Sir Henry Norris, the groom of the stool.
King's personal servant.
King's personal servant.
Lots of applause today.
Sir Henry is also adorned for the hunt. You will also notice that he is wearing leather. We discussed yesterday. Not terribly appropriate for court, but excellent for the hunting.
Black work abounds.
Remember we discussed yesterday the difference between a chain of office and a jeweled collar. This is a collar. It does not denote any station at all. What does denote station, my lord, as far as being a knight, if you would hold the hands up. I am not wearing mine. Both of these gentlemen are wearing garters on their left leg. It says "On ne suis comme ne pas," which is Vulgate French for dishonor to him who thinks dishonor upon it. This is the sign of the Order of the Garter,
A knighthood.
the oldest existing order still to your day.
And most prestigious.
This is the order of knighthood to be in England.
26 people, 24 plus the king and his immediate heir. Members must vote on anybody who comes in, and the king has final approval.
And it's lowered even more by the fact that people like the King of France and the Emperor tend to be made honorary members as well. So that lowers down the positions available even more.
Tremendously prestigious.
So that indicates their knighthood. One other thing I'm going to point out about Sir Henry before I let him go. You look at his shirt. This is called Buckingham lace, also known as blackwork. Somebody loves this man very much because that is always done by hand and usually done by someone with a personal relationship to him, not by someone he hired.
600 years later, he has a shirt.
But it is a work of love.
And therefore he is proud to show it and own it.
And this is what many of the ladies will do in their spare time while they sit and discuss and talk and plan.
You know,
They will
because
do
ladies
needlework.
never get together and talk.
No, they never do. Rarely, very rare.
And by the way, this is something that women of all class do, including the Queen.
Yeah.
So she will sew shirts for her husband, the King. It's a woman of the womanly eyes.
Back to the
Would you like to mention the greatcoat again?
Yes. In fact, I'll have both of you gentlemen stand forth. Two different versions of the greatcoat we discussed yesterday. You'll notice that they are very similar in design, but also very different. This is very obviously, I'm going to use the term, a journeyman's greatcoat.
I'm a monk.
This is a coat of the nobility. You will note that it is made up of a very rich material that in fact matches his doublet and trews. It is also a velvet, both black and red.
Both very expensive.
Remember,
colours.
both very expensive colors.
They're beautiful. Black perfume.
This is simply called a cape.
Aye.
It is essentially a coat with no sleeves, known as a cape. I have it trimmed in fur.
Again, part of the Sumptuary Laws.
Certain furs are allowed to certain classes of nobility.
Ermine, I think, can only be worn by earls and above, I believe, or something like that.
Indeed.
And sable.
Sable, various other furs. If you see a lot of fur on someone and they are not covered in filth, they are probably of the nobility.
Now you'll also notice different types of hats that we are wearing. Hats are very important as well.
We always wear hats.
Yeah.
Men wear their hats inside and outside. Makes no difference. They will take them off if someone, the head of whoever is in the household. In some cases, if we're in the presence of the king, if he removes his hat, we will remove our hats.
Aye.
We will remove our hats for the purposes of greeting a woman.
Your Grace, I think the 6 hats of the 6 of us say a great deal about us, just because they're all very different designs, each, and just to look at them, you can tell that this man is a little more scholarly, probably. That this man is a member of the nobility, of gold and things, and various other things
Mine
as
has
well.
putrid
We are of
blood
the
on
lower
it.
class.
So you're a sailor.
Yeah. Mine is for keeping the sun out of my face when I'm sailing.
And this is my hunting cap, which is also for keeping the sun out of my face. This design has been around for a very long time with a rounded crown.
Now, interesting fact. Most of the French that you'll see who are the musketeers, they wear their hats thus, without the feathers. The feathers will be in the back. But the reason they do this is because when they fire their arquebuses, they have it here and they bend down to fire the arquebus. That way, the brim of their hat's not catching a fire.
Because that's not a good way to
I do it as an insult to the French.
But you know that some of these hats, you see that some of these hats provide a good deal more shade than others do. This is not something you would normally be wearing out and about in the countryside.
I love the clouds today.
Mine is for travelling and keeping the sun out of my face. It's got a very wide brim because I travel here, there, and everywhere.
Ours as well. Mr. Sporton is wearing a hat that
Called the English flat cap.
called the English flat cap. It is very popular among all the classes.
Started out flat. Moved it gradually.
Of all of the classes.
Now, this man here is wearing a flat cap as well.
Indeed.
Now there is a cap that I wear when I am at work indoors, and I'm not wearing this one. It's called a biggin hat. It's very simple, and it's worn actually all the way up through these classes here. I wear it as a scholarly sort of cap. It's a very close fitting skull cap sort of a thing.
It's almost like an arming hat.
It is, and it comes all the way down here. Its purpose is to keep one warm.
Aye.
Solely. It covers the head quite nicely and keeps one warm, because it's awfully drafty sometimes when one is scribbling away in the dark of night.
It is small and it looks like someone has taken 2 kerchiefs and just sewn them together and put some string of it on it, and it fits tightly.
Is it just fashion to wear hats so much, or is there? I mean, yes, function to be out, but
It is both fashion and function. Warmth is needed.
Another thing it will tell you almost immediately where generally they are in station.
Aye. It's another identifier of class.
For instance, Johnny probably prefers straw because
You can make
felt
it.
or leather or something.
I can easily replace this hat. This is the 177th hat I've had since I started traveling. I have to replace them often, so I do not want something fancy I cannot afford to lose.
you also said that
Right.
Indeed.
There are regional dialects, clearly, so one can tell where one is from. But also, there are class dialects. And so, this is not my natural dialect, I will be frank with you. I grew up speaking rather differently. I grew up base-born in Putney as a commoner. And so, but I work at the court, and if I am to be treated seriously, I must speak thusly.
Now, if you listen to myself or Mistress Weaver here or Mistress Borden, you'll hear a different dialect because we're from here in the north.
We talk a bit different.
We're all northern.
Yeah.
Well, what passes for northern anyway?
Yeah, the further north you go, you turn Scottish, and it's completely incomprehensible.
And once you get into the Highlands, you just look at someone strangely when they speak.
You think they're gagging, really.
Yeah. It's very guttural.
I speak as if I am from the south, although actually I have a very distinctive, it is called a lazy S, and it is in fact very distinctive of East Anglia, particularly Suffolk, which is where I'm from.
So mental note, these two put on airs. I do not care for such, which is why I rarely attend court only when forced.
And why nobody takes you seriously.
Yeah.
But
And of course, I'm Scottish originally, though I've been in Ireland for a long time, so you might hear me occasionally fall into a bit of Irish as well.
You did.
I sound a bit like a lad from Glasgow. I was born not far from
Well, Dundee is close to us.
Right.
Yeah.
we have but a few minutes left, Your Grace.
Indeed.
Are there any? You would like to open it to questions?
Questions?
Any questions about clothing, food?
sumptuary, food,
Ladies' hats.
ladies' hats. Excellent.
Well, you will see ladies like Lady Norfolk.
There's
here
quite the fashion coming in.
Shade, or did they just burn
Sometimes.
Well, her grace is clearly noble and thus has no need of shade necessarily unless she's hunting.
Most of her work is going to be done inside.
Indeed.
We have one lady that is traveling with the court who has adopted what is known as the Flemish flat cap.
Yeah.
The Flemish cap is a very wide, very flat looking.
It's like a flat cap that grew up.
Yes.
Aye.
This is the French hood.
Yes.
It was brought in from France, clearly. Made very, very popular indeed by our good Queen Anne.
Now there is a hood like this called the English hood, which is very different in that this part. Pardon your grace, I do not wish to insult you, but this part goes further down and in front of the ears. However, the French, in their manner, do it higher up.
We also have something called the gabled hood.
Yes.
Which
Now
is
they have fallen out a bit.
The Dowager Princess, formerly Queen Catherine, Catalina d'Aragon, was very fond of these. They're wooden contraptions.
And they're shaped
They look
kind
like
of
a
birdhouse.
doghouse.
Indeed.
There is a gabled hood is as much architecture as it is a hat.
Yeah, true.
True. And heavy.
Very.
Sometimes with the wind inside to give it form. The outside will be cloth.
My lady.
Were there any other rules for women that they would have to follow inside?
There is actually.
There are quite a number.
Generally, only unmarried girls may wear their hair down. Or the queen on a state occasion.
On May Day.
Yes, and the fact that we are traveling with the court, rules have become rather lax.
You are
Which is why she does not have her hair up in a snood. Instead, if you'll turn around, Lady Norfolk, you'll see that she fashions her hair with feathers falling down the back of the neck.
Again, something she is doing because we're in the provinces and she is enjoying the travel.
The ladies of the various classes will also have various strictures on the number of skirts, the type of material used, so forth, and of course the underskirts and the unmentionables.
Showing
unlimited.
the lower part of their arms, showing a shoulder.
Showing their ankles.
For example, her grace here has a construction underneath her dress to hold it out. So
These good women have just raised their sleeves. To see them means they're getting ready to dive in and do some serious work, or they're
it's Sunday
advertising.
afternoon.
If you see this much of a court lady's arm, then you are probably in closed private chambers with her.
in intimate conversation.
Aye.
If you see a woman's shoulders, that is also somewhat of an invitation. She is advertising.
It is not uncommon on Sunday morning. You would get up, you would attend mass, and then you would go to they have your version of a block party called an ale. It's where the entire village gets together and everyone contributes, and maybe you're getting together to rebuild someone's barn or to raise a building for someone.
Aye.
And the available women will, pull their shoulders down and let their hair flow free, kind of advertise to the boys.
We will go into this in much greater detail when we do our sex in the Renaissance class.
That's not for children.
But it's not only what you're wearing, it's how you're wearing it.
How you wear
it. As they will say.
This lady has a question of
So why is it okay if you can't see the wrist or the ankle, but
Well,
I mean,
there's a number of reasons for that. One of which is what you are showing off is your ability to feed children.
To be a mother.
And now,
be a mother.
you want to mention the corset, Your Grace? And
Well, once again, I mentioned this yesterday. I will mention it again. The reason she is cinched here is not because we think that the slender waist is attractive. She is cinched here because it accentuates the hips.
it flares your hips and make it look like you got big hips.
You are good for childbearing.
There you go.
And we are
at time.
Yeah, my lords and ladies, thank you very much. We are at time. Please join us next on Saturday. We are covering life at sea and piracy and privateers in the afternoon.
And then
on Sunday we're doing
life in a port town and
land travel in
Land
Tudor
travel
time
in
in
the
the afternoon.
Thank you very much, my lords and ladies.